My friend Brett wrote a really cool children's book a while ago, and he asked me if I would illustrate it. And I was flattered, of course. And as soon as I read the book, I was like, immediately, yes, I will do this. It's so good. The first challenge was to design the two main characters. The lead is a girl named Millicent Clark, who has some issues with the way that her feet look. The trick here was to make sure that the character didn't look too young and cutesy, but also that I didn't get too weird and crazy with the design either. And then there was Dr. Parts. Millicent goes to see Dr. Parts to see if he can help her with her issues, and he ends up making her synthetic body parts. I wanted Dr. Parts to look friendly, but also to be sort of a caricature. When Millicent sees the billboard of him, I wanted that to be how he looked in real life. Larger than life, a little bit like Guy Smiley. Then it was time to figure out what the synthetic limbs looked like. In my first pass, I think I leaned too much into like robot parts, and Brett didn't really want to go that direction. But he liked this sort of Westworld-looking 3D printed resin vibe that I did. So we ended up going with that. Then I experimented with a variety of facial expressions and got to work on what the backgrounds might look like. I ended up storyboarding the whole book in these tiny little thumbnail drawings just to get a sense of how the story would flow and also to see roughly how many pages the final book would end up being. And there's something really cool about being able to see the whole story sort of laid out like this. Backgrounds are always a bit tricky for me. I spend most of my time drawing characters and people and figures, and I don't really spend a lot of time drawing environments. So this was an interesting challenge and a bit of a learning experience for me to spend this much time getting this many different backgrounds and environments drawn for this book. Again, I wanted them to have a storybook feel, like a classic storybook feel, but I also wanted them to have some texture and some interest. But they needed to not compete with the main characters, so they had to be pushed back a little bit to let the characters stand out. I'm such a sucker for seeing my own work in print. It never ceases to amaze me, that feeling of making something on my own in my room, in my studio. And then in the mail, getting 20 copies of a book filled with my own artwork that I drew. It's just, it's a really cool feeling. But there's also a bit of sadness that happens when you finish a project. When you're like, oh, I guess it's done. And the only way for me to really deal with that is to start a new project.